Okay, so this unit is all about solving inequalities. So the first thing, we're just going to go over the basics, just kind of remembering what exactly the inequalities are. So let's start with this top left. Okay, so we're going to kind of make these into a fun little activity. So if you want to get like highlighters or colored pencils or something, that'd be awesome. So the first thing we're going to do is say this is the less than. Okay, so this is the less than sign. It's also, okay, so since this is the less than symbol, I'm just going to make a little Pac-Man guy, and I'm going to color him in. Boop, 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 boop. Okay. We're going to have Pac-Man eating, right? But because this is the less than symbol, that means that I have an open circle. Less than means my circle stays open. So I'm going to make this into like an apple, but it's not a filled in apple. And it's not a filled in apple. So this is an open circle. So it's an open circle. Okay, so I'm also going to write that in here. Open circle. And it's open because it's just less than. It's not less than or equal to. When we get to that, that's going to become the equal to sign. And what's key to remember is kind of what way the arrow points. A quick way to remember what way the arrow points when we graph is to simply go from the middle of the mouth or the middle of the inequality sign and extend a line out. So now we see that the arrow will now be going to the left. So the less than symbol has an open circle and an arrow to the left. Okay, so now let's talk about the greater than symbol, and that's this one. So this is greater than. Okay, this is also an open circle. Okay, so this is also an open circle, and you could write that in there. Open circle. Now, the main difference between these two, greater than, means my numbers are bigger, or x is bigger than the numbers. And when I extend this arrow, now instead of going to the left, it goes to the right. Okay, so this inequality with greater than, I'm still going to keep a Pac-Man because I like the Pac-Man idea. He's eating the apple, but he's eating a open apple, a rotten apple. Okay. I tried to make Miss Pac-Man, but it didn't work. It's a terrible bow. So there we go. Greater than, the arrow goes to the right, open circle. Yeah. Now looking at the bottom two. The main difference here between the bottom two is that they have the equal sign. They have greater than or less than or equal to because of that bar down there. So this is really less than or equal to. And I'm kind of running out of room, so write small. Less than or equal to. And again, that's because of down here with this bar. Now, because my inequality can be equal to, now my circle is filled in. So it's now a closed circle here. I'm going to fill in the circle. So now it's a closed circle. Okay. And what else is important to remember? Less than. Remember, just extend your arrow out. Less than or equal to, your arrow goes to the left. But because it's equal to, we now have a closed circle. Okay, so last one to remember is greater than or equal to. So this is greater than or equal to. Okay, same thing with this one. It's a closed circle because it's equal to, so it's a closed circle because it's equal to, right? And we could tell that from the bar down here. And it goes to the right because it's a greater than symbol. Okay, so those are really important to remember. So if you want to pause and make them fun looking to kind of help you remember, that's good. If not, that's all right. So now let's look at the bottom of this page. So we're going to look at these first two. So the first thing I want to highlight is this inequality symbol. Okay, so think about what inequality symbol that is. So if you look up above, that inequality is less than. It's a less than inequality, which tells me that I have an open circle at 4, and the less than, remember we just extend an arrow out, so it tells me I'm drawing an arrow to the left, and that's what my graph's going to look like. So it's less than, so that tells me it's an open circle. It's an open circle at 4, and it goes to the left. The next one is a greater than or equal to. This is greater than or equal to, which if you think about or if you remember, equal to means I have a closed circle there, a closed circle. And greater than, if I extend that arrow out, points to the right. Okay? So now I want you to take a minute or two and try to graph the next two. So take a moment or two and graph the next two for me. So I would pause my video here, and when you're done, unpause. Okay, so now that you're done, you should have gotten for 3, it's a less than or equal to sign, so that means it's a closed circle going to the left. For 4, it's a greater than symbol, so that means it's an open circle at 2 going to the right. Okay, so let's go to the next section. So these notes are a little long, so let's go to the next ones. So the first thing we want to do here is go over the steps to solving the inequalities. So it's very much like an equation. So we're just going to solve for the variable. So we're solving for whatever variable it is. With inequalities, we use a lot of different variables. So it could be a and whatever. One thing that you really need to remember, so step number 2 is just something to remember. It's if you multiply or divide. So if you multiply / divide by a negative sign, you then have to flip. So if you multiply or divide by a negative, you flip your inequality sign. And we'll kind of review that. So one more time, when you multiply or divide by a negative is really important there, you flip your inequality sign. So I'm just going to do a quick example just kind of to show you. So I had negative 3x is less than 12, and I divided both sides by negative 3. I would then flip this inequality sign, and now it would be instead of greater than, it'd be less than. Okay, and this would be negative 4. Okay, so we flip that inequality sign because we divided by a negative. So that's important to remember. Our last step is to simply graph the inequalities. So graph inequalities. And that's what we just reviewed. So those are the steps. So let's put that into practice then. So let's look at this first example. So the first thing we need to do is to solve for x. So we're going to be solving for x here. So I'm going to be drawing my little river if you need to. Remember, we add 7 to both sides, bring down that 4x. 5 plus 7 is 12. Now I divide both sides by 4. And then I'm going to get x is less than or equal to 3. So that's what we solved. Did we multiply or divide by a negative? The answer should be no, so we don't flip our sign. So now all we have to do is simply graph it. So we're going to graph, hopefully you remember, a closed circle over positive 3. And because the arrow is pointing to the left, so is our arrow. Okay. So let's do one more together. Let's look at the next one. This one's a little trickier because we have variables on both sides. So the first thing we need to do is get all of our x's on one side. So I'm going to subtract 3x on both sides. And I get 3x plus 4 is greater than negative 11. Now I'm going to subtract 4. And I get 3x is greater than negative 15. Divide by 3, divide by 3. X is greater than negative 5. So now we have a negative in the answer, but did we multiply or divide by a negative? The answer is no, so our sign stays how it is. So now we just graph this at negative 5. We're going to have an open circle, and because our arrow points to the right, so does our arrow. Okay. So now I want you to work on the next one. So I'm going to move this up for us. So now I'll pause this video and try this next problem for me. Okay, so hopefully you got a fraction. It's okay to get fractions for answers. So please be aware of that it is okay to get fractions. Your answer should be x is greater than or equal to 4/3. Okay, and this is what your graph should be. Just kind of estimate it, right? This looks about like 1 1/3. So now we're done the basics. So get working on your activities.